Welcome to the Couchboard podcast, where we naively talk about anything and everything for your listening pleasure. I'm Max, and as always, I have the pleasure of being joined by Colby and Jordan. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Fantastic.
I'm getting into the hundreds this week out here in good old Phoenix, Arizona. So that's what I am looking forward to. But what's up? What's new? What's going on in everyone's lives?
Definitely not 100-degree weather. We are in a balmy 80-degree area, actually 70s, which is beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, we were in the 70s. Oh, I guess, yeah. I just looked at the weather. Yeah, I guess it will get up to that.
Someone hasn't been outdoors since
coronavirus. COVID, man. It's keeping us all cooped up. It's crazy. I did have to go into work today, and that was weird because a few people there, everyone wearing masks, you know. But, yeah, besides that, I did watch a good movie. Great movie. Knives Out. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
You know, I saw Knives Out and everyone loved it. And I enjoyed it, but just not to the same degree as like everyone like I didn't walk out being like, I loved that movie. I was like, yeah, I had fun.
So for those who don't know us super well, Max is the resident naysayer, just to prepare you for that. I loved Knives Out as well. I thought it was really good. I just thought like it was nice to have a movie that was, you know, it's been a while since a good murder mystery has come out. Like it's not a common genre these days.
Yeah, I mean, it was just original, right? I mean, in the world of comic book movies, it was nice to have something different. I mean, I will say Adam Sandler's last murder mystery movie was pretty fantastic. But
that one was actually
that was pretty.
That
good.
one wasn't half bad.
That was
forget what it was called.
No, I
think it's just called murder mystery.
I think that actually is something. Yeah. That's what it is. No, I really love a good whodunit, and maybe I overhyped it in my mind because like that's one of my favorite genres.
But you're right. Everybody was like, that was 10 out of 10. Like everyone was raving about it, and it was. I mean, I think it was good, but yeah, I could see how that would throw you off.
Yeah, there was like I think what I actually ended up liking the most about the movie was that freaking house. Like the set was just like amazing. Like it was just like I was like whoever like designed this house and like furnished it and like just like made it look the way it was like deserves an Oscar because it was just like very meticulously done.
Yeah, an eclectic murder mystery author. Yeah, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And again, like the plot was good. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't in the right mood. Maybe I need to go rewatch it. Or maybe it's just that I'm still salty towards Rian Johnson about The Last Jedi. Maybe that.
Now this he redeemed himself, I'd say.
Yeah. I've been reading a lot. I'm on the last book in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, White Sand, and that's.
I have no idea what that is. Then it's like you just
said
a bunch of words,
like super nerdiness. But
what is it? What's the?
So
give me.
So it's Brandon Sanderson's the author. He finished the Wheel of Time series for Robert Jordan after Robert Jordan died. He's a fantasy author, and he's written all these books that take place in the same universe, even though they're fairly unrelated. It's kind of like the Marvel universe almost. They're unrelated stories mostly, but they take place in the same universe. So there's an overarching story, and there's characters that cross over, which is kind of fun. So there's the Mistborn series in it, the Stormlight Archive in it, and some other one-off books and short stories. So this is the last one I have to read, and then I'm all caught up until book 4 of the Stormlight Archive comes out this November, called The Rhythm of War, I believe. So I'm pretty stoked for that.
I still don't understand what you're just kidding. It still just seems like Rhythm of War, Time Wheel. I'm teasing.
Is it a branch off of Wheel of Time, or is it just the same author or similar?
No, it's just the same author, but it's completely separate. I mean, he was approached by Robert Jordan's estate and chosen to write those to finish that series. This is his own thing that he, is completely his. It's really good though. I would recommend any of his books. I'd start with Mistborn. The first Mistborn's a really, really good read.
I have to look it up.
Yeah.
I watched a movie on Netflix over the weekend that probably should have seen a long, long time ago, but I just never seen it. But I saw Road to Perdition, which I thought was pretty good. I'm sure, but it was. I mean, actually, I feel like it aged pretty well because I think it's like 20 years, almost 20, or maybe it's like 15 years old at this point. But that was a pretty good movie. Although it was kind of weird seeing Daniel Craig in the role of a villain, so that was interesting. And then I've also been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is like, I don't know, that might be like the only big video game that comes out for a while, and it feels like it's the only big video game that has come out for a while because it seems like people might be pulling the plug on video game releases with the current pandemic. But that's exciting for that to be out. It's interesting because I don't know if you guys know, but Final Fantasy VII is like it is got to be the most beloved entry in the franchise. So it's interesting to see it totally redone and new graphics. But they're like breaking it into multiple games, and so it does like feel like it's gonna take way too long. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted in the years to come.
I'm upset you're not done with it already.
I know. It's just, between work and being a dad and just trying to have like a normal life, it's not like the good old days like when you're in high school or in college where you could just like spend an entire weekend playing a video game. In fact, that reminds me, one time in college, Colby and I used to be roommates in college, and I remember I had a Wii, and I like downloaded like the original Donkey Kong Country games. And I remember like Colby like went out for work on a Saturday, and for some reason I wasn't working that Saturday, and I was just sitting there playing Donkey Kong Country when he left, and he came back home like who knows how many hours later, and he was like, "Have you moved since?" Like, pretty sure the answer was no. I hadn't moved, but to go back to those days, right?
Good times. Good times.
Well, on that note, it's funny that I guess I have video games on my mind since I'm hosting today's episode. But today we're going to talk about video games. It's a subject that I hold near and dear to my heart. I am probably the nerdiest gamer on this group. Maybe some of you guys give me a little bit of a run for my money, but ever since I was a kid, I've really loved video games. I've enjoyed them. I've followed the industry. There's probably not a day that goes by where I don't actually like check out the headlines and see what's going on. So I thought it would be fun for us to talk a little bit about different generations of video games and talk about the evolution, but really what I'd like for us to drill in on are like what is like our favorite generation of video games. So this is kind of the framework that I'm working from, and you guys can tear it apart and disagree with me if you don't like the framework that I have here. But I thought, and obviously there's stuff that goes on before this, but I thought we would start with like the NES, or I should say like the regular Nintendo Entertainment System and the Atari. So we'll call that Generation 1. And then for Generation 2, you've got your Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis, the Game Boy, the Game Gear. Then Generation 3, we've got Nintendo 64, PlayStation, Sega Saturn. Which, by the way, did either of you guys own a Sega Saturn, or did you know anyone that owned a Sega Saturn?
I think I knew somebody, yeah.
But I didn't own it.
Yeah, I remember it like being a thing, but like if I couldn't name like a single game,
Sonic.
That was
The Simpsons.
besides Sonic, right?
The Simpsons Crazy Taxi was like the only game that I ever saw.
Are you sure that wasn't on Dreamcast?
Isn't that what we're talking about?
Oh, you said Sega Saturn.
Oh,
That's
Sega
not what I'm
Saturn.
talking about.
Oh, you're right.
Sega Saturn.
You're right.
All right, well, let me keep going through the framework.
Sonic.
Because
There's a Sonic game, I'm sure.
There's a Sonic game. All right, so then Generation 4, we've got the GameCube, the PS2, the Xbox, and then we have the death of the Sega consoles with the Dreamcast, which I'm pretty sure that's the one with Crazy Taxi. Great game, by the way. Then we've got the PS3, the Xbox 360, and then the Wii in Generation 5. And then last but not least, our current console generation, which is PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Wii U, Switch. And then, of course, PC spans all of those, but specific games, we'll throw them into one of those categories. So, framework makes sense. Any criticisms, any problems with it?
No problems. I
Nope.
do concur that you're the nerdiest with the video games.
Hey,
Not the nerdiest
I'm not
overall.
ashamed.
Not the nerdiest overall, but definitely with the video games.
Yeah, I don't know. I just haven't. Although I will say, like, in like the last year or so, I'm like, maybe I am growing out of it. Like, I have spent far less time in the last year, and maybe it's just because I'm a dad now, and that's just like ultimately what kills your time for being able to play video games. But every now and then, when I do have spare time, like, I'll turn on my PlayStation 4 and try to start playing something I can only get through like 30 minutes. I'm like, I need to go to bed. I'm exhausted. So that's what happens when you get old. But anyways. So those are frameworks that we're working from. And I think I'll start with you, Colby. So of those generations that I just outlined, let's start with, like, what's your favorite? Which one do you like the most? Walk me through why it's your favorite. And then, we'll start there.
So it's really hard because when you think about comparing like the original Nintendo Entertainment System with like current generation video games, it's almost apples to oranges, right? It's like it's more separate than comparing like mobile games to, Xbox 360 games or whatever, because they're very, very different and they've come kind of a long way. So there's huge variety in between. But for my lifetime and experience, I think the second generation that we mentioned with the Super Nintendo had to be my favorite and kind of the golden age of gaming for me. Um, you had games like, for me, my big ones, Zelda: A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Mario Kart, first iteration of Mario Kart, Super Mario World, the Donkey Kong Country games, which were awesome, and then some like, I mean, just random nerdy games. Like I played Wizardry 3, which was a really,
I don't know. I don't know if I've heard of that one.
yeah,
What is
it's a
it?
dungeon crawler RPG game.
Huh.
It's really hard, but was pretty fun. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I don't think I ever played a video game more thoroughly than Zelda: A Link to the Past. I spent more time in that version of Hyrule than I think maybe any other game world until they got super huge, like Skyrim and Breath of the Wild and stuff. So that would have to be the golden system for me is the SNES.
That's a good one. All right, Jordan.
I think I'll have to go with the next generation with Nintendo 64. What makes me think that's the best, so to speak, is that I can go back. I don't have a 64 anymore, but I could fire up an emulator and play any of those games. And,
No, you couldn't, because that's illegal.
I wouldn't, though. I would. I could.
Yeah.
And still have a lot of fun with them. Now, I just got the Sega, classic or whatever, the one that they re-released has some games loaded on it. I've been playing that with my kids, and that's fun. I mean, it is really enjoyable as well. But something about the 64, it's like from Sega, from the Super Nintendo. It's just such a leap in capability. That I just kind of think that like you still have some graphics that don't make your eyes bleed, so to speak, and you could still kind of play it and enjoy it still. Super Mario 64 was a fantastic game that you could start over and go and get your 120 stars or whatever and like have a blast, I think, even though you know exactly what to do. GoldenEye was a fantastic staple. I mean, so many fun games that like and I will say that the time frame for me of where the 64 was when I was growing up was kind of what was it, late elementary school into middle school, and so it was just that cool thing to do with friends and stuff. And I don't know, I think that one, looking back into the past, that one sticks out the most to me for sure.
It's funny that you say that because I actually feel like relative to like the Super Nintendo or the regular Nintendo, I feel like the graphics have aged worse on the N64 than it did on like the Super Nintendo. Because like the Super Nintendo, like it is what it is. Like it's just like, a lot of like side-scrolling games, and it looks fine in its own right. But since Nintendo 64 and like PlayStations were the first ones to like jump into like that 3D realm, and that's what we currently continue with today. Like I just feel like when it just hasn't aged as well.
That's true, because there's a difference between the 2D and the 3D, and so the 3D looks almost more primitive, even though it was a huge advancement.
Right.
But I remember when the N64 came out, playing Wave Race like over and over and being like, the water looks so real. Like it was a huge deal.
Where was Tony Hawk on 64 or just PlayStation?
Yeah, that was on
64,
64.
yeah.
I mean, those graphics I think hold up, well enough.
Probably.
I think, I don't know. To me, it's not the blocky, and Super Nintendo and Sega, they weren't necessarily blocky, but limited color palette and just a little bit harsher to look at, especially on a big TV. It's not as easy to cozy up with as it was back in the day on smaller screens, and just being all there was. Right now that we've had even all the way to the virtual reality and stuff, it's just, I think it just is a different world going back to that. I don't know.
Right.
They're splitting hairs because they're back-to-back generations, so I mean there's not a ton of difference, right? But that was a good one. 64 was a good one.
Well, I think one area where you're definitely right is I remember when the N64 and the PlayStation came out, and particularly the N64. And maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there was no console that came out that caused a bigger wave throughout society, or at least when I was a kid in school. I mean, that was such a huge deal. I remember there was a story in the paper about two women going at it in a store over the last N64 that was there. It was a huge deal when video games made that jump. So anyway, a lot of what we have today comes from that. But when it comes to my favorite generation, I'm actually in the same boat as Colby, where Super Nintendo is my favorite one. I actually have a funny memory of when I first got my Super Nintendo. So my brother and I, we had to buy our own, and we didn't get allowance or anything. We had to do chores, but my parents would pay nothing. And I remember from the get-go, when we were getting paid for our chores, my brother and I were we're gonna save this up to buy a Super Nintendo, but my parents are paying us a quarter or 50 cents for things, and they're there's no way they'll ever get enough money, save up enough money to do it. But we saved every single penny for a year and a half, and I still remember going with my family to the store to buy our Super Nintendo. And popping in good old Super Mario World, which actually we should do an episode one day on what the best Mario game is, because that's my favorite Mario game. I really, 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 really like it.
There's so many.
There are so many, and they're all so good. And again, it's not a knock against any of the other ones, but I love that game. But same as Colby, Zelda: Link to the Past, phenomenal game. I've probably beaten that game at least 25 times. I would say it's just really, really good. But then I also like some Super Metroid, although I didn't play Super Metroid until I was a lot older. For some reason I never picked that up. But then since I am the nerdiest one here, I'm probably the only one that played these games. But Super Nintendo also had really, really good role-playing games. Did either of you guys ever play Super Mario RPG?
No. I watched you guys play it.
It's so good. I love that game. That's a really good one. Final Fantasy 3 /6. It's the same. Well, topic for another day. That's another really good role-playing game. And then probably my favorite Super Nintendo game is Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Trigger. I did play Chrono Trigger
yeah.
a bit. I never beat it, but I did play it.
It's good. But I think the cool thing about Super Nintendo, if you look at Chrono Trigger or Zelda: Link to the Past, they started bringing out this idea where like Chrono Trigger, for example, you're in the same world but you'll travel through time, and so the world will look differently or look different in different times. And you look at Zelda: Link to the Past, you have the light world versus the dark world, which was kind of a cool concept or idea where it's this is you're exploring the same world but in a different way. And so yeah, I love the Super Nintendo.
I definitely think, when I think back, I definitely remember more titles on Sega, because I only had a Sega and didn't have Super Nintendo, but they shared a lot of the same games. But I remember more of those games compared to 64 games. I don't know if that just meant I played more or played more games, or if they were just that much more memorable. But like Golden Axe was a good one. There was an X-Men game that was really fun. Battletoads. I mean,
Battletoads, man.
Those
games were tough.
A ton of fun games.
Aren't they making a new one? I think Microsoft has like the rights to Battletoads, and like supposedly they're making one for like Xbox or something.
That'd be fun.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't even know what that would look like. That's crazy.
It probably. Well, I mean, it's like becoming more common nowadays. Like you see like in the current era of video games, like you're seeing more and more like of like indie games like going more retro and like going back to like NES/SNES like side scrolling graphics. Like, have you guys ever heard of Shovel Knight?
Yeah.
Like that was like a huge successful game, but it like looks like it's straight from regular Nintendo, but yet it was like still massively popular today.
Yeah. Another good game from that generation, Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Yeah.
I never played Zombies Ate My Neighbors, but that's really hard too, isn't it?
It's hard. I remember the summer Dave was determined to beat it all the way through.
Yeah.
Did he?
I don't know. Did he?
Yeah, but pretty sure. And we never
phone a friend. Get him on the podcast.
It's one of those games where you get like you can't save, but you like get checkpoint codes.
So you're like writing them down.
Yeah, exactly.
In your spiral notebook.
Yeah, he's got like a full notebook of checkpoint codes.
That took a whole summer to beat that. That was good. I mean, like I said, I feel like there's tons of those titles that like the Aladdin and Lion King games were like that.
So
like
good.
Really fun, even though the Lion King one was near impossible. But it was, there was a Jurassic Park one. The
Jurassic Park one was awesome.
Yeah.
Although I think it was different for the Sega than it was for the Super Nintendo. I think, which was also kind of like an interesting thing. Like the Sega games, like you'd have like an Aladdin game that would be like different than the Super Nintendo Aladdin game.
Oh really? I didn't.
You're like making.
I couldn't tell.
I think Aladdin specifically was the same on both, but I think you're right on the Jurassic Park one was different.
Well, like on the Super Nintendo Jurassic Park, like they had like a anytime you went in a building. Did you ever play it, Colby?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, where like you go in a building and it would like turn into like first person, and holy smokes, like as a kid that game scared me half to death because I mean like now like I don't know, maybe it'd still be scary today, but like you're going through these buildings, there's like these raptors running around, and the controls, and that's part of what makes it scary is like how do you control a first person shooter on a Super Nintendo controller, and that's just what makes it terrifying.
Yeah, that's a good one. NBA Jam.
NBA Jam.
He's on fire.
That's a great game.
It's fantastic. There's even a Power Ranger game that was pretty fun.
I don't know if I played Power Rangers.
It's good.
I remember on the Sega there was like the Tasmanian Devil game was kind of fun. Earthworm Jim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great.
So
Street Fighter.
Oh yeah, Street Fighter.
Yeah, all
Streets
the good fighting
Rage.
games I feel like were on that generation. Some really good fighting games. Wasn't Mortal
Kombat.
Marvel versus Capcom?
I don't know, when did that come out? I just remember Street Fighter would destroy my Super Nintendo controller, the D-pad on him from doing all the Hadoukens. It just thrashed it.
So I could definitely remember more of those games over 64. Like 64, there's plenty of good games, but I feel like I only play I think I had more 64 games than I had Sega games, but I would only play a select few 64 games like over and over and over.
Right.
Yeah, same thing. I feel like we had like a whole cabinet that was like had stacks of Super Nintendo games. I think it was because they were cheaper too. When the N64 came out, the games got kind of more expensive. But we only had like one row of N64 games.
Yeah. All right, so now let's talk about honorable mention. So I guess we'll go back in the same order. So we have Colby and Max. We like Super Nintendo the most. Jordan, you like N64. Are there any honorable mentions, or is there a runner-up that you'd like to call out?
That's rough. I mean, my runner-up would probably be N64. because of all the reasons we talked about. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask were awesome games that I loved playing over and over. I'm trying to remember. Oh, the first Super Smash Brothers, that never got old.
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
Mario Kart.
I never played the N64 Mario Kart that much. I don't know.
I didn't like the N64 Mario Kart as much either. That's probably my least favorite Mario Kart, which I know is like blasphemy, but
mine too. It's my least favorite.
I would even play this. I like the Super Nintendo one way more.
Yeah, I did too.
I don't like it.
Anyway, but since we've already talked about the N64 so much, I'll switch to a different honorable mention, which would be Era 6, Xbox One. I guess that's the current one.
Yeah.
Oh no, not Xbox One. Sorry, previous Xbox 360.
Xbox 360.
Yeah. Xbox 360.
Okay.
So yeah, Era 5. That Xbox 360, because that's what we had, while we were all living together in college and stuff, and I think we played Halo Reach like so much. That was like our life for a long time.
Yeah.
But I had some tons of other great games. The Mirror's Edge was an awesome game. Assassin's Creed.
Did you ever play the sequel?
No, I haven't gotten
Neither have
I haven't gotten a modern console besides the Switch, so I need to. If I get one, that'll be one of the first games I get. But the Assassin's Creed games, 1, 2, and Brotherhood, I thought were awesome. I got bored with them after that. The Force Unleashed 1 and 2 were really fun games, fun Star Wars games. And then some of my favorite games of all time were there, like Portal 1 and 2.
It's a great
Two
game.
of my probably in my top 5 favorite games of all time. The Portal games. Skyrim and Oblivion came out on the Xbox 360. The Elder Scrolls games, I was really into those. Loved those games. So that would probably be my next one.
Yeah, there were some really good games in that generation.
And it was still to the point where it was like manageable. I feel like nowadays, like I know we'll probably get to this, but you could easily keep track of all the games that were coming out and pick and choose and say this one looks good, this one doesn't, whatever. That's not super doable anymore, but that was kind of the latest generation where I felt like that was possible.
Huh. Well, I guess I'll talk about that when it's my turn, but I feel like it hasn't actually changed that much. Like I feel like there's still like
that's because you're a nerd and you invest way more time in it than us. I'm just kidding.
I would probably say next runner-up would be kind of like a classic PC games, so to speak. I mean, yes, we have streaming and stuff, and main streamers I follow do, first-person shooters like PUBG and that other one, Black Ops and stuff. But I'd say when I was growing up, there was, StarCraft was a great game, and continues to be a majorly played game. But I also played a ton.
What's more popular, would you say, StarCraft or StarCraft 2? Like today?
I'd say StarCraft still. I mean, they still have tournaments.
You think more people play StarCraft than StarCraft 2? I have no idea. I don't really feel like I hear of anyone playing StarCraft 2 anymore, but like StarCraft 1 has has a huge cult following.
When did StarCraft 2 come out?
I think it's like 2008 or 2009. It was
like way later, right, than StarCraft?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think StarCraft 1 is still way more popular.
Mm-hmm. StarCraft is such a classic PC game that I played a ton of the Command and Conquer, Red Alert games over and over and over. And I mean, I think they were just fun. They're just kind of those, God mode games where you could just, manipulate everything and kill the Russians. So it was fun. That was good. Same with Shogun Total War. That was another one of those games that took up hours and hours of our free time when we were kids. So I'd say some of those older games that we just grew up with on the PC. I think those were always fun.
Did you ever play the original Half-Life on PC back in the day?
No, I haven't played any of the Half-Lives, unfortunately.
I played like a little bit of the first one, and it freaked me out, and my computer couldn't run it. But I played it
I didn't play it until much later because our family computer at home definitely could not run Half-Life.
I had to play it at John's house, so I'd go over to John's house and play it, and it was fun. But yeah, my home computer couldn't handle it.
It is a bit creepy. It is a little bit freaky, but it's a good one. It's a classic. And they actually just released a new one. I don't know if you guys saw that, but they released like an all
Alex. Was that Alex?
Yeah, Half-Life Alex, where it's like a purely virtual reality.
Oh.
Which apparently it's like getting really good press and reviews because I guess they're saying like, hey, this is like some of the cool stuff that can be achieved like when you have a really good studio like going all in on virtual reality. I don't know. The idea, I don't know, it's something about the idea of putting like something over my face
Freaks me
and
out.
playing a video game. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I remember when I was like a teenager when like, because like virtual reality was like such just like a concept like back then. It was like an imagination kind of thing. Like I feel like you would see it like in cartoons and stuff, and I was like, oh man, but maybe you would get like lost in the video game and like forget to come.
It would become your life.
Out.
That's funny.
Yeah.
In that vein of games, like StarCraft was by far my favorite of those games on PC too. Did you guys play like Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 3?
Mm-hmm. I
Warcraft 3.
I think I played all the Warcrafts.
World of Warcraft was another great one.
I didn't play World of Warcraft.
I never played World of Warcraft either, but Warcraft 2 I think was the best one. That was a phenomenal game. Warcraft 3
I really
was
liked
fun.
Warcraft 3.
Warcraft 3 was definitely fun. I feel like, I don't know, for some reason the graphics got a little cheesier, which I didn't like, and it had a story, which for some reason I didn't really like because Warcraft 2 didn't really have a story. I mean, they did, but it was very, very minimal.
But you don't have to play the story. Come on, you
It's
can't
true.
fault it for
It's
having
true.
a
Warcraft 3
like,
was
just go play battle
was
mode.
definitely fun. I remember Warcraft 1 where you you couldn't build unless it was along a road or something.
Oh, I don't remember that in Warcraft
Yeah.
1. I remember I think Warcraft 2 you had boats, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there were ships.
And you'd have to like harvest oil like out of the water or something. I remember.
And my favorite one was, well, not my, maybe it was probably tied with StarCraft, was Age of Empires 2. You guys play that one?
Oh yeah.
That was a great one.
I didn't play that one.
was a fun game.
Yeah, Warcraft. Well, I wonder if Blizzard will ever make another
movie
game like StarCraft. Or did you ever see the Warcraft movie?
No.
I'm gonna let you sidetrack it.
I watched it.
No, I
Don't lie,
never
Jordan.
saw it.
I watched it. It was not as bad as I thought, but definitely not good.
Yeah.
Maybe you're if Colby says like I'm super super negative. Maybe you're the opposite. You're too,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm the optimist.
Too forgiving.
I am too forgiving.
Yeah. You're too forgiving because I'm pretty sure I haven't heard a single good thing about that movie. But maybe I'll.
But I had super low expectations going in. Like I thought it was going to be like maybe the worst movie that's ever been made that I have seen. And it wasn't good, but the graphics were way better than I thought they were going to be, which was kind of that was fairly redeeming, but I still will never watch it again.
How did it compare to Assassin's Creed?
Assassin's Creed was bad. I actually thought it was going to be worse.
Michael Fassbender.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I didn't hate that one. I thought it was all right. I didn't think it was amazing, but I didn't think it was great.
I didn't see either of them, but I just know they both got terrible reviews.
Yeah.
I kind of liked the Assassin's Creed movie. It wasn't.
I didn't love it.
It wasn't awful
because I feel like it had like a low budget because like I feel like probably like 2/3 of that movie was spent like in the current day, like the current era, and only like 1/3 of it was spent. And I don't even remember. I think it was like Spain or it was the setting of the movie,
like medieval Spain,
which is like the total opposite of like the video games. Like the video games is like 85% and you're spending in like the historical setting.
Anyway,
we're getting sidetracked with movies now.
Yeah, we are. I know. We gotta let me get us back on track. So my honorable mention would be the current, actually. Although I think it's very similar to like the 360 era, and I love the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 era. But the current generation of consoles, I think there's some really, really good games out there. So I have a PlayStation 4, and like for example, I guess neither of you guys have probably ever played Uncharted before, but the last Uncharted game came out on the PlayStation 4, which is a really fun kind of like modern day Indiana Jones game. So that one was really good. There was a really good God of War game, a new Spider-Man game, Horizon Zero Dawn, and then you have the Switch, which Breath of the Wild is, I would say, probably the best game I've played in the last 10 years or so. Like it was that great. So actually, I'm like very pleased with the current generation of video games. I think there's a lot of and Red Dead Redemption 2 was another really good one. But I find that like when I was a kid and when I played video games like the Super Nintendo, it was like all about like what was like super fun to play. And now like I'm finding like as I've gotten older, like I'm more just like in it for like an interesting story. And I think, and I mean, it being fun is important too. But I think there's some really good stories out there that people are able to execute
I
on.
think it's a reflection of kind of the industry that in the beginning it was what's fun. You know, we're going to do this because it's challenging. Really was the point. And then nowadays we're looking at full-fledged narratives with full-on huge storylines and huge open worlds a lot of the time. And so
Right.
it's been a big transition. But kind of the indie game scene has come back with games kind of that are like
Right.
the old school, which are just challenging and less story based, which is kind of fun. So you kind of get the best of both worlds now. But
Yep.
yeah, I find the same thing. My my big thing like now is like I just love huge, immersive open worlds that you can explore. So that like Breath of the Wild was one of the greatest games I've ever played. The Elder Scrolls games, Skyrim was amazing. I would love to play Elder Scrolls Online, but haven't gotten there yet. So
See, I can't get too far into you know the giant worlds. It's fun sometimes to me, but usually I like more games that are you have an objective.
Linear.
Yeah, A to B. You have an objective, go do it, and you could be successful or not. And this is why I stopped playing World of Warcraft. Was yes, you had those objectives, but they just became repetitive. Maybe it doesn't really compare to World of Warcraft. You had the same wherever you went, it you had the same like 10 type of objectives, right? Go gather 10 of these and kill this person, right? But that's different from I think what Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, and Breath of the Wild are. But to me, I just really like those. You've got one thing to do or a couple small things to do, and then you have the end of the level. So I haven't gotten too far into infinite world type of games myself. I don't have a big
I
enough
mean, I
brain
think
for that.
no, I'm in the same boat as you on that. Like Breath of the Wild, I was actually surprised I loved it as much as I did because like Skyrim, for example, like I think the vast majority of gamers are on Colby's side with that one. Like it is like, I mean, like people are still playing that game an insane amount today, which is funny because it's an offline game. It's been out for years and years and years and years and years, and people love it. And I have tried playing that game. I bought it for the PlayStation 3. I bought it for my Switch again because I'm like, let me try it again. Like, why didn't I like? And I probably have, and like both times I've played that game, like I get into a mode where like I really enjoy it, but then I eventually hit this point where I get burned out. I'm just like, holy crap! Like, there's like
What am I
so
doing?
much to do here.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was just like I can't, and it just I get a little overwhelmed by it and can't keep going on. But I think the thing that I really liked about Zelda Breath of the Wild, and Colby, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but I feel like it kind of broke that aspect that you were just talking about, Jordan, where like I feel like in Zelda Breath of the Wild, like you're never really like going out and like doing like fetch quests or like go kill this monster as much. Like it's like really like the map and the world is so well created. Like you're just like, and like I feel like the game somehow does like funnel you down certain paths, but like you never really see it or you never really feel it. Like I feel like you just kind of like naturally find stuff, but like it's all about like you find like a new place and then like you just like spend like hours just tearing it apart, like just trying to find every like nook and cranny, but like you're not really there for like any specific purpose. Like no one put you there, no one sent you there. You're just like, hey, like what's going on here, like what's that thing over there, like let me go climb all over it and see what's going on. And they just I still don't know how they made that world work the way it did, but it just absolutely hooked me.
that's 100% like the appeal of all of these games is like, and I can see where you get bogged down if you're like super accomplishment minded or like quest minded. Like when you start off Skyrim, it probably gets pretty overwhelming pretty fast. That's not how I ever played any of those games. I played those games like I played Breath of the Wild, whereas you just kind of go out and explore, and that's kind of, I think, the appeal is you're dropped into it's the escapism appeal. You're dropped into a brand new world with strange properties and abilities, and you just start exploring, and that's kind of how I played those games and why I love them so much, because they're so immersive, and you have the freedom really to just do anything you want. So if you want to go to this place that looks cool, you go to this place that looks cool. If you want to just go as far as you can in the map in one direction, you can do that and just look at everything. And the Elder Scrolls games are really fun that way because you can find quests or follow quest lines to accomplish things in the game, but and you have to do that to learn a lot of the things. But there's just a lot of history in it. Breath of the Wild is a Zelda game, so they're really the history is murky, and there's not
no,
a ton
Colby.
of it.
There's an official timeline that explains everything there is to know.
But in the Elder Scrolls games, there is an official timeline, and there is like a background, and like these places have been around in other games, and there's books about them in the world, and it's just really cool. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings a bit, where you're living in a world where there's an established history, and there's so much of it that you could never know all of it, so you just get to go out and explore and learn it.
I bet I would like it, if I actually sat down to play it, but I've just never gotten to the point where I'm like, I really think that would be a fun game, so let me go buy it. So instead I've, played, most recently, the video games I've played have been like PUBG and Black Ops, where you could boil it down to it's an A to B type of game. You start off in a match of 100 people, and you're supposed to be the last one standing, right? Like, that's the objective. And so I've just been drawn to those recently, but I'm sure I could get into them. That's not my first choice usually. So maybe one of these days I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
Well, to get us back on track, like, I think we went down this path, like talking about like storytelling in games, and I think Colby hit on like an interesting theme is like, and I think again I gravitate more towards Jordan, where like a linear game probably more often than like a massive. I mean, I like linear with like some autonomy and some flexibility, but I think Colby hit on something that's kind of interesting is like, now you're seeing, I feel like, and maybe it's not super new, but I feel like it is kind of new. Like, now you're seeing like this theme where like the story is like kind of like out there, and it's like kind of on you as the player to go explore the world and like figure out what that story is and really what's going on. And a good example of that is I recently played, have you guys heard of this game called Sekiro Shadows Die Twice?
Nope.
It's made by this company. They're like really popular. It's made by this company. I think their name's called From Software, but they make these extremely difficult games, and they're popular because they are so difficult. And so I played this game, and I was like, I beat it after much blood, sweat, and tears. But I was talking to my brother about it, who's like super into these games, and I was like, like I like enjoyed it. So, like, I felt like it was super hard, and so like it was fun in that sense. Like, I beat like this impossible game, but I don't know if I like the story wasn't like enough for me. And then he was like explaining to me like all these elements of the story that I had just like breezed by and not had like seen or experienced like in any way, shape, or form. And so I do. So I on the one hand, I was like, oh, like I didn't catch any of that, and on the other hand I was like, oh, that's kind of like cool, like that there really was like a deeper story, and shame on me for not like better engaging with like the world to explore that. And I think that's like something that people who don't play video games have a hard time wrapping their minds around, because it's like everyone loves like stories, like everyone loves like movies and books and stuff, but the thing that I love about video games is like you kind of get to progress through the story like in your own way and like how you want to. Whereas like a movie, like it's just like served up to you, or like a book, it's just served up to you. But like in a video game, you have a little bit more control over how that story comes to life.
And that's where and that's maybe just my personality, because that's the part that I like in movies and books too. Like, I found that my favorite part of a movie or book is the exposition, where you're learning the world and how everything fits together, and then everything else falls into place. Like, I loved the movie Avatar for the first half of it, and then I got really bored. But I love the exposition and exploring the new world, and so I think that's tailored to people like me.
I liked Avatar until they said the word unobtainium, and then
I will say this about Avatar. I just recently rewatched it. It's on Disney Plus. Checked it out. Man, the graphics still hold up, and it's
Hmm.
10 years old now. And you'd think, with how much CGI has progressed, that it wouldn't. But man, top notch still. Got to get it up for
Well,
James Cameron.
I watched a few. I'm not going to let us get sidetracked with movies, but I'm going there. But I had a similar experience like 5 years ago. They re-released Jurassic Park in theaters, and I hadn't seen it in a while. But I remember sitting in the theaters rewatching Jurassic Park, and the movie. I think it was like its 20th or 25th anniversary, and I remember just sitting there thinking like, wow, like just the way they shot it and the way like they handled the dinosaurs in that movie, like it held up remarkably well,
Yeah.
even by today's standards.
Yeah, I don't think many of the dinosaurs were CGI in that. I think they were all puppets and stuff, and then they built some aspects of the world in CGI around it. But they're so subtle, you didn't really notice it. I think they did a good job.
I think like there was some CGI, like I'm thinking of like at the very end of the movie, like when they like fall out of like the ceiling and then like they're being like circled by like the velociraptors. Like, I don't see how they could have done that without CGI, but what do I know?
Well, that-
You know what scene I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
well, they hired raptors for that scene, so
They got Chris Pratt in there, you know. He just held up his hands,
yeah.
which I can't go down that path. 'Cause
We'll
if you
get to
me
that.
started-
We'll
Yeah,
come back
yeah.
to it.
If you get me started talking about Jurassic World,
We'll-
I will start ranting
We'll
for
come around
an
to
hour
it.
at
We'll
least.
circle back. to
But
that.
I don't mean to change subjects too much, but I think so. You know, people spend hundreds of hours on Breath of the Wild or Skyrim or all these games, and I just feel like I don't have that kind of time to devote to a video game anymore. You know, like so for me, it's
You
kind of
do.
it's got to be something snappy.
I mean, people like, but people say that all the time about video games, and maybe I'm like defensive because like I'm a huge gamer, but it's like people sink hundreds of hours like watching TV shows and other like everyone is
but that's
wasting
productive,
time. And
Max. That's productive.
exactly, and that's like a common stigma against video games.
But
It's like
well,
I like talk with people all the time at work. I'm like, how do they have time to watch like all these shows? Like, and then it's like they're probably thinking the same thing about like, how does he play all these video games? It's like we're just wasting time. And
No, I've got nothing against wasting time, but with and this is a bit of a sidetrack, but for me, you know, when I watch a show, I'll usually do it with my wife, so it's like even though we're not engaging like at all, besides laughing together or whatever, it's something we're at least doing together, and I don't really have a. We have been playing Sega together actually a little bit here and there, but I don't really have a console for us to play together in a game. So anyway, going back to the point is I feel like I don't have that individual time to devote to a video game. Whereas when I was growing up, I had all the time in the world to do that, right? And so, and like that was, I feel like that's something that's kind of lost. Now, I think the world's changed, but obviously we've grown up. Like, I remember every Friday night, if I was lucky Thursday night, we'd go like almost as a family to Blockbuster or wherever to
Yeah.
the parents would rent a movie, the kids would rent a video game, and like because I only had it for like 1 or 2 days, I would play the crap out of that game, and like because I couldn't save it or anything, right?
Right.
So you would just play and play and play, and like I remember one time the guy at the counter was like, "You just checked this out last week. Are you sure you want to play this game again?" I'm like, "Yes, of course I am." And so I feel like I took those opportunities back then to really play through games and beat games, whereas now I just feel like I just don't, between kids and just family life and work, I just feel like I don't have the time to put into games like I did anymore. And I think just that, I don't know, it's just nostalgia looking back at it, but I think that was what makes the Sega 64 those golden age type of consoles for me. But
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat where like you don't have that kind of time to devote to a story, which is why you've kind of defaulted to competitive games, and I kind of default to that as well. I've been playing Brawlhalla. That's kind of the only thing I play right now on the Switch. It's also a PC game. It's free to play. Super fun. Check it out. And it's a competitive game. It's like a platform fighting game. And so I play that, or I default to something like Breath of the Wild because I've become able to play those games like Breath of the Wild or Skyrim without an objective, without having to follow a storyline. I just go explore for a little bit, and and that's fun for me. And I don't have to have a definite end to have that be worthwhile. But I agree, like other games, like I won't go back and play like I it would take a lot for me to go back and play an Assassin's Creed. My wife would have to be out of town for like months for me to go back and play an Assassin's Creed game all the way through, you know. So I'm kind of in the same spot.
I hear you. Yeah, my wife works a lot in the evenings, so I'm left on my own whether I like it or not. And so when Mr. Max has left his own devices, video games are my go-to.
Yep.
So, alrighty. So now, last, because I want to get us out of here before we ramble on too long. But we're at kind of like an interesting point in time right now where the current generation of consoles are winding down. Rumor on the streets is that, actually it's not even a rumor, I don't think anymore. I think both like Sony and Microsoft have confirmed that they're pushing out their next consoles end of this year. So given just like kind of the evolution of video games, anything that you're excited to see, like anything coming up on the horizon that you think would be cool with video games?
I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily new with this generation, but I just really like watching streamers play games. Like, I'll just have that on in the background, like when I'm working and stuff. Dr. Disrespect is hilarious, and it's very entertaining with how he plays video games. So it's like, I'm not even playing the video game, but I'm like still enjoying the game itself and learning about the game. I especially with this COVID stuff, I know there's been a huge uptick in the number of people trying to stream and make money off of it. I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, along with tournament play and stuff like that. I think you're just going to see gaming get competitive to another level. Like we already know there are, sometimes they'll make ESPN or something, like rarely, but it happens. But I think we're going to start to see it more and more become more mainstream as a media source, watching people play games. I get it. It's funny. It might seem funny to like watch someone play a video game, and it is a little bit, but at the same time, they're entertaining, and you're watching a fun game that, like, I suppose if you don't know anything about the game, it might be annoying, but it's kind of like that's your sports team, right? And you know all the stats on the sports team and stuff, and so then you're that much more invested in the stream itself. So I think it's just going to become another way of watching sports. It's going to be esports.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm one who always kind of bagged on Twitch and streaming and was like, why would you watch someone play a video game instead of just playing it yourself? And I haven't ever done it, so I still am kind of that mindset, but I've just come to the realization that I'm never going to get around to playing Kingdom Hearts 3, so I'm just going to have to watch somebody play it. So I might have to jump on Twitch here to just watch somebody play it so I can...
Colby, I'll play it for you.
Deal.
And you can
stream
watch
it
me.
so I can watch. 'Cause
It's disappointing. Keep going.
well,
not to burst
maybe
your
I
bubble,
won't watch
but...
you then. Anyway, but I have to know, so I'm going to watch. But I'm kind of coming around to that mindset because of the time thing. But I can listen to somebody explain what they're doing in a video game and look occasionally while I'm working. So maybe I'll throw someone up streaming while I work or something. I don't know. But yeah, I'm of that mindset. The thing that I'm most excited for in the future of gaming is just the realism. Like, I saw some videos of the newest Xbox system that hasn't been released yet, of some like in-game footage. I don't even know what game it was or anything, but the world just looked full on real. Like, it looked like, a video
Cyberpunk.
recording of outside. It wasn't cyberpunk. It was like a medieval one, so it was mostly outdoors in the wilderness, and the realism was just insane. And as someone who really likes being immersed in, a new world, usually a sci-fi fantasy world, I think that's going to be really cool to see.
Yep.
For sure.
I think the level of immersion that they're going to be able to achieve is interesting. And I think another thing is like what they're able to do now from like a technical standpoint. And I think the first video game to really do this was God of War. But like the newest God of War, I should say. But like they will switch from like cutscene to gameplay interchangeably with like no break, no cut, no loading, no nothing. Like you can play through that entire game without a single loading screen, which is just like a I don't know, just a weird little world that we live in, where you can just kind of have like everything unfolding at the same time, and I'm curious to see how they can keep pushing the envelope on that stuff in the next generation. But yeah, that level of realism is, I don't know, it's like, it's always like funny because like when the next generation always comes out, like you're always kind of like, oh my gosh, like it feels like such like a huge jump in graphics, and then you like look back at like the previous generation and you're like, why did I ever think that looked good? So anyways, it'll be fun to see how things unfold in the next year or so with the next generation. Alrighty, my friends, any final thoughts, comments on video games before we wrap?
None here.
Alrighty.
They're fun. They are fun, huh? Mobile game, that's another big thing.
Yeah, I guess we didn't talk about mobile games, but yeah.
I am back, sadly, into my Marvel Puzzle Quests. It's a go. Joe plays it too.
I know Joe plays it, and then like he tried to get me to play it. I think I played it for like an hour, and I was like, I can't.
It seems so freaking boring to me. But there are some fun ones. The Fallout Shelter game is pretty fun. I like that one.
I haven't played it.
Yeah, I haven't played that either. I tried playing Fallout 4, and I had the same problem as I did with Skyrim. I'm like, this is super fun. And then like 20 hours later, I'm like, I can't. I can't. But I think you're exactly right, Colby. The reason why I can't is because I do exactly what you're saying. Is like I go down a quest line and just try and hammer through all like the quests, and then I get burned out. Versus when I played Breath of the Wild, I never did that. I was just like, let me just go out here and explore and have fun, and then I'll finish the game whenever I finish the game.
Free your mind, Max.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, we'll go ahead and close. So thank you, all our lovely listeners, for joining us. Make sure you like us, you subscribe us, you rate us with 5 stars and 5 stars only. If you don't want to rate us with 5 stars, go ahead and send us some hate mail to, what are we, the Couchboard at gmail.com, the Couchboard podcast at gmail. What is it, Jordan?
Yep, the Couchboard at gmail.com.
Couchboard at gmail.com. Send Colby some hate mail there. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the Couchboard, and we will see you all on a future episode. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Peace.